Hey everybody, Portland Chess Shop here to bring you the chess action, and we have another game from the U.S. Chess Championships, round number 2, and we're going to be looking at Grandmaster Hess versus Grandmaster Seirawan, two well-known players in the U.S. chess community, and there were 4 draws today and 2 decisive games. The other decisive game, other than this one, was Kaidanov beat Strapinski. Excuse me for mispronouncing everybody's name, but that's the way it is. I'm doing my best. So that was an interesting game, but we'll be looking at this one. And so Nakamura drew as did Kamsky, meaning that nobody is going to get the 64K Fisher Prize for going 12-0 or 11-0 in the tournament. But that's all right. I would like to see more decisive games, and I've heard of a few different funny ways of trying to create that. I heard of, for example, Fisher Random is a variation of chess that I really like, where basically all these pieces are scrambled for the starting position, but you still have castling, and endgames end up being like the same thing because when there aren't that many pieces on the board, all the endgames are similar in some sense. Rooks still want open lines. You want the pawns to be the opposite color of your bishop. Centralized knights are good. So the same principles of the endgame occur, but there's way more openings, which I think is really pretty interesting because in modern chess, with the computer and such, opening theory has developed very, very rapidly. A new position is only a theoretical novelty for a day or a matter of weeks, depending on the strength of the novelty. And so players are having to try to win in different ways than they used to. Players are much stronger, much more consistent because of the power of the chess computer. So Fisher Random is one possibility, but there's also some other crazy possibilities. There's like Armageddon chess. Like imagine if Seirawan started with more time than Hess, but if Hess drew, then it would be decisive in Hess's favor. So that's the way that Armageddon works, is where black has less time, but black has draw odds. It's kind of interesting. We usually have draw odds in Blitz when I play at Pioneer Square in Portland, Oregon, because if black draws, then he gets to keep the table, and white has to leave. So, but there's some other options too. Like there's this one crazy option where if they draw, right, then with the remaining amount of time that they have, they keep the same amount of time and swap colors and play another game. And they can even play like a third game and everything, like if the second game draws, right? And it just keeps going until there's a decisive game, which I think would be very nerve-wracking. But it's a cool idea to create, more decisive games, make chess a little bit more exciting. I'm a big fan of Blitz chess. I think that's pretty fun. I think that there's probably more decisive games in Blitz chess than in classical chess, and that's just one of the reasons why I like playing fast. So let's get to the action and see what they did. So we see Queen Pawn up 2, and Jen Shahade and Ben Feingold were doing live commentary of the game, and I really have a big crush on Jen Shahade. So shout out to her. She's I don't know, she's very good at chess, very good at poker, and a great gameswoman. So anyway, she was talking about how a lot of the players are playing Queen Pawn in this tournament. I think that there's maybe less solved openings with the Queen Pawn than the King Pawn. Is kind of the idea. Like the Berlin defense that we talked about with Kramnik, black just basically draws that, where there aren't defenses like the Berlin defense that are so drawish. There's more play, more chances for both players. So knight f6 is played. That makes it an Indian type defense. And after e6 is played, so the pawn up, is the classical attacking the center, trying to control as many squares as possible with as few moves as possible. And this pawn move creates the possibility of like a Nimzo, because these knights are going to come out next. That's knights before bishops is one of my favorite proverbs. I actually do it a lot. I think it's a good proverb. So the knight comes out, the bishop pins it, and now we have a Nimzo Indian defense. So both players playing pretty quickly. So I think Hess is much younger, much more of a rising star than Seirawan. Seirawan's been playing for a long time, wrote some excellent chess books, and that must have been at least 20, 30 years ago. Probably 20 years ago. So the old versus the new, and in chess, often the young prevail. And I almost wanted to quit chess once when I lost to like a little kid in a tournament. Here's a castle. So the idea behind the Nimzo for black is you play the fastest possible way to finish developing your king side, and then white will have controlled a lot of control the center with pawns and such, and you'll be able to attack the center from the sides. Is the idea. So the queen moves here, obviously, so that after the bishop takes, he'll be able to take back with the queen. So he does take. So now white does have the bishop pair, and that is white's advantage in this position. And the Nimzo Indian is often positional, and but positionally complicated. It's still rich with interesting possibilities. So pawn up is played. Now this bishop could fianchetto. Both players playing, I think, pretty logically. This bishop comes out to pin this knight, and then he'll be able to play e3 if he wants, and complete the development of this bishop while having this bishop out of basically this wall of black pawns. So the bishop comes over here, fianchettoing itself. Both players playing pretty quickly. This is basically just standard opening theory. So f3 is played. I think that this might be standard too. The idea is you trade off the dark squared bishop, and then you take the whole center with e4. Gives you, a big strong center, but at the same time you haven't developed this piece, you haven't developed this piece, and your king could become weak in some cases. Could be forced to castle king side where it may be too exposed, queen side. So c5 is played. Now black is attacking the center immediately in response to white's potential to control the whole center. So pawn up is played. If c5 is played one move later after e4, then d5 would definitely be a possibility, in which case white would have a lot of space. So here we have an exchange of pawns. Takes, and the pawn is played up only one square. So white does have pretty good control of the center squares, though. See all four of these squares, right? Because these are the four center squares. This one, this one, this one, this one. He has a pawn attacking these three, and then his queen attacking this, and nothing of the black side is defending this square. So white has pretty good control of the center in this position, but he needs to complete his development. So here's the queenside castles, and then a5 is played. a5, trying to get this pawn a little bit closer to the king. In some cases, the pawn advances and can become very threatening. Here's takes, and the pawn takes back. This is a pretty interesting position. He doesn't want to take with the queen to exchange because white might have an advantage in a long-term endgame, but black definitely has some chances at attacking this pretty weak white king. And you're also taking towards the center, so you have more control of the center, but at the same time you have doubled pawns. Doubled pawns being a little bit less mobile. So the knight comes towards the center, finally developing the knight. And this rook decides to come up. So this rook is defending across the 6th rank, right, as well as has some possibilities to swing over, attack down these files, attack towards this king. So the knight comes out to f4. I think the knight is pretty well placed in this position. It also has the possibility of coming to h5 to attack, for example, this f6 square. So the knight does come out, prophylactically defending the f6 square. The knight does come to h5, keeping pressure on this. So now 2 are attacking and 2 are defending. So the queen is not able to move off this line of defense, and it's good to be able to move your queen into aggressive positions instead of defending positions. The king comes to the center, to the corner, excuse me. Now this pawn is pinned, but at the same time, one of the advantages of the double pawn is that there's an open g file, in which case the rook has the possibility of coming to g8 and then coming out to either g6 or, I don't know, possibly g5. Position generally equal, but there's definitely positional play for both sides. So g4 is played and defending the knight, but then again, pawns don't go backwards, and this bishop is just becoming a little bit stronger, I think, now that f3 is less defended. Pawn up is played, putting basically a clamp in the enemy position. The enemy, or white, that is, this pawn could become threatening in some attacking lines. So you see that Hess is down on time, and it's a pretty even match. Both players a little bit over 2,700, and so Seirawan has maybe a slight edge on time, but at the same time he has 30 minutes left with 30-second increment, so he's not in too much time trouble yet. The rook comes up to d2. Prophylactically defending b2. If you don't know the word prophylactic, it's really a good word to learn for your chess skills. So go ahead and look that up and try to play it in Scrabble, but it's probably way too many letters. But yeah, it's a good word, so I think you will learn something if you look that word up. I've explained it in some of the other videos. Oh, sick! That's like a tactical shot. So it looks like Seirawan made maybe a mistake here, allowing rook takes g4, because if pawn takes back, then bishop takes the rook on h1. So this is, I was just talking about how this bishop is a little bit stronger after g4 is played, and Hess immediately finds a way to exploit it. But at the same time, it opens up a few lines for white, and so this sacrifice is actually, the computer kind of likes the sacrifice for white. We'll see kind of how it goes. So takes, takes, takes. And now g5 is the aggressive move. So that's why this had to be calculated pretty precisely, because now this pawn is attacked 3 times and only defended once, and it doesn't look like black has a way to defend that pawn immediately. His only possibility is to play e5, after which he has 2 defenders and the queen is no longer attacking, so there's only 2 attackers because there will be the pawn blocking the queen's attack. I forgot that I could do that. That's pretty awesome. So the bishop moves back towards the center, defending, along this line, also controlling a lot of squares, keeping this king from, having less squares to run from. And this could be good, except it looks like e5 would have been a better move, because now knight takes f6 might be pretty strong. He doesn't play knight takes f6. It looks like he blunders. Let's look at this. So knight takes f6, knight takes f6, queen takes, pawn takes. So everything trades on this square. King moves to g8, rook moves to d1, and it looks like this could just be an endgame advantage for the white player, according to the computer. There would be, some positional considerations there. Maybe the rook gets to g7 and is able to take this pawn. Something, well, maybe not exactly that, but something happens. But here it looks like this could be a mistake. After bishop takes h3, rook takes d3, it says that rook b6, and no, the computer changed its mind a little bit. It likes takes, and then e5 for that same reason of blocking some of this powerful threats down this square. But at the same time, this idea of getting the rook here and getting the rook here, I think, is going to continue. That seems like a strong plan. So takes, and then e5, blocking this diagonal. So white had maybe an opportunity for a turn to use this diagonal to his advantage, create a powerful pawn on that square, but he won't have that possibility now. So g takes f6, and then black decides not to take back the pawn, which seems kind of risky, but move the queen to this open file where it does have a lot of squares. I'll give it that. And you can see that this rook is pretty misplaced because it can't really go this way, and it's going to have to take an extra 2 turns to get where it wants to go. So this rook is, I think, a weak player. This knight is kind of weak too, because as we talked about in my video, knights on the corner are pretty weak. They just don't have that many options within 2 moves. So queen moves back, and this knight comes forward, attacking c4. Seems pretty good. Queen e2, and the knight doesn't take back. Hess is playing maybe some mind games with his opponent. Kind of interesting in this position. So queen f3 is played, and now rook b6 is pretty good. This rook is basically, it's defending b3, but even if it defended b3, a pawn on this square would be pretty dangerous as well. And it's just going to take the rook a couple extra moves to try to, activate itself. However, it does decide to try and do that. So he decides to play pawn up, I think, to control the 3rd rank. But it looks like this could be a blunder, creating, pawns never move backwards, and it could be a permanent weakness. Looks like there's a tactical shot after rook g1 check. I think he'll play it. Rook g1 check, rook, blunders again, so maybe. It looks like queen d1 could be a little bit better, but this is about the same. And now queen takes h2, threatening checkmate right here. Rook to d2. You can see this king is just way too exposed. Check, blocks, and now checks again. King up, and the rook comes down with decisive effect, controlling the third rank. Just pretty brutal. It's amazing. This pawn looks really dangerous because, you know, if the white queen could get there, it'd be checkmate. You know, I mean, if that queen wasn't there, etc. So this pawn looks really good, but it looks like black found some serious weaknesses with white's defenses, particularly his b3 square is very weak because of, you know, c4 and a3. Excuse me. Rook d3 is played. After which there's an exchange, the king takes back, and h6. Kind of interesting. Queen comes up, and the queens aren't exchanged. I will admit that these grandmasters are much better than me at chess. I can't deny it. I'm just doing my best to, you know, try to explain what I see, and you know, what they see might be completely different, but at least, you know, I think intermediate and beginner players will get some benefit from my analysis. And look at the time, right? Hess has 35 seconds, while Seirawan has 1 minute and 45 seconds, and they have 6 moves to make before the time control. So this is a serious time trouble, serious scramble type position. Pretty exciting. This king is exposed. This king is also very exposed, and the position is very double-edged. It does look from Crafty's analysis that black has a significantly better position, but it could go either way in this sort of time struggle. So the queens are exchanged, which does simplify the position significantly, I think. And let's see, there's 2, 4, 6 pawns for black, and 2, 4, 5 pawns for white. So black is up a pawn, and that's good for him. And this pawn, I think, is going to fall in the endgame, possibly. So that could be a factor. We will see. This king is centralized, but it doesn't really have invasion squares, because these 3 squares are all controlled by the black pieces. This square as well. So black has a pretty good structure for the endgame. Kings start to come forward. The knight comes forward. And now this knight is able to take here, which seems really, really good because now these pawns aren't defended by that pawn. I think a lot of players would have been tempted to try to defend with their knight. But after that defense, probably wouldn't be good enough because it's good to play, you know, as dynamically and aggressively as possible. And that's why this plan is much better of letting the knight take on d6 and then advancing this pawn to a queen. Hello. Sacrifices the knight, but the knight can't be taken because if the knight takes if the king takes the knight, then this pawn advances immediately. So he can't even take it. So takes, and now there's another check. Loses a couple pawns. Now the king takes. So I really like this. He was able to use the threat of promoting this pawn to take here and take here, taking 2 pawns, one of which with check. But after he threatens that, and with this check, forcing the king to move away from the knight instead of towards the knight. So he gains a couple tempos, and then he takes this pawn. So I do think that was a pretty sick move order by Hess. Both players have reached the time control. They get an extra 30 minutes for the position. So there's going to be a little bit of maneuvering with the king, but it looks like this is a decisive position. The black knight wins another pawn, and the white knight takes a pawn. But you can see that these 2 connected pass pawns are uber strong, and they are turning into queens. One of them is going to turn into a queen with this knight, and this knight and king are just not sufficient defense against against this army, and thus it looks like Seirawan resigned in this position. So congratulations to Grandmaster Hess, losing his first game to Nakamura in an exciting Evans Gambit, and winning his second game in an impressive fashion with the black pieces, showing that he's here to battle. And so the live analysis of the U.S. Championships is really good. I recommend that you check it out. It's with Jen Shahade and Ben Feingold. But the really, really important thing is that if you thumbs up my video, it's really helpful, and please, please do it if you liked it. If you watched it all the way to this point, I think that it's time to thumbs it up because it's just one click, and it helps me get more views, and I'm just trying to spread the chess like Johnny Appleseed. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Until next time, Portland Chess Shop. Goodbye.